Well, hello. This is going to be the first of I don't know how many different vlog posts, but I figured I'd just take my thoughts while I'm in here in Japan and explain some of my experience for the people back home. So far I've been enjoying it. I arrived in Japan last week on Thursday and it's currently Sunday, Japanese time, and it's been quite the experience. So I flew out of Idaho, and that flight was about 2 hours from Boise to LA, but it was delayed for about an hour on the tarmac. So I was a bit concerned that I might have lost the flight going out of LA to Tokyo. However, fortuitously, that flight in LA also happened to be delayed for 2 hours. So I took the opportunity while I was at the airport at LA to just upgrade to the United Airport Lounge rather than wait around in the crowded international section out of the terminal that I was flying out of. So I spent the time 2 hours in the airport lounge, came down, and then we started boarding. The flight that we took from LA to Tokyo was a 787, a Boeing 787. There's about 300 people on board. And as luck would have it, I happened to have the whole row to myself. So even though I was flying economy class for an 11-hour flight, I was spending it alone, which is great. The food on board wasn't bad, but it wasn't super great. Some stir fry and some bread. I think the European flights that I've been on were a little bit better in terms of their quality, but can't complain. I didn't buy the ticket. So when I finally arrived in Tokyo Airport, I came to the Haneda Airport, but we did find that the passport control was a bit confusing to get through. So for when you're flying from a US or some other foreign country into Japan, there's a two-step process. First, they want to validate your passport and your visa information to go into the airport proper, and then you have to go through customs. So the first part I had to do was getting through passport control. So unlike other people who were flying in on a tourist visa out of the US, I had an occupational visa. So I had to both show my passport and show proof that I had this visa to be here for a longer period of time in the first place. Now, where it got confusing is when you get to the passport control station, they ask you to fill out a paper form with your passport information, your visa ID, where you're staying, contact information, that sort of thing. And they also ask you to fill out an online form so you can get a QR code. And they want you to do both of these. But it wasn't really clear exactly what they were doing or why. So I ended up spending about 10 minutes trying to get the online form to work, but turns out later you didn't even need it in the first place to enter. It was more to get a tax-free code for tourists. So I'm not a tourist, it didn't apply to me, but I filled out the paper form, which had my passport information, along with my passport, and to the officer at the passport control station. She asked me for my forms, looked over my documents, and gave me my residence card right there. So the residence card is something that all foreigners have to have if they're going to stay in Japan for a longer period of time. It has your visa information, it has the identification of who you are. It's basically your ID, and it's important to have it as a foreigner because you can be asked at any time by the police to show identification, and in most places you're going to need it anyway to fill out your paperwork. So she gave me that right before I even went through customs, but I had a bit of a problem in that it took me so long to get through customs that my luggage that I had checked had actually arrived quite earlier than I did. So by the time I got through customs, it was about a half an hour, 45 minutes after the flight actually landed. I was looking around for my checked luggage on the other side of passport control. Couldn't find the plane number that we flew in on, so I just assumed it hadn't arrived yet. I checked my phone. It said the bags were on transit, but they hadn't actually arrived yet, and they didn't have a carousel number. So I was kind of waiting for my bags. And I waited for about another 10 minutes trying to find my bags. But then I started looking around again, and I noticed that there was a bunch of officers around a piece of luggage that was in the middle of the floor. And getting closer, I realized it was my other suitcase. So they were about ready to basically evac my suitcase, just like you would in the US if there was abandoned luggage. But I got it at the last second and had to apologize for causing such a ruckus for taking so long to get through passport control. So try to be expedient, I suppose, if you do happen to arrive at Tokyo. But once I got my stuff, then it was a matter of getting through customs. So when you go through customs, you have to declare you have a whole bunch of money on you in terms of cash. If you have any sort of contraband, any sort of like animal products and plant products, which could be a danger to the wildlife here. But it was pretty simple. There's an either electronic process where if you could get the QR code on your form to work with your passport, then you could simply just go through the electronics customs control. Or if you had to, like me, then you just fill out your passport information again onto a paper form, say what you're carrying or not carrying when you're making your declaration, and then go through customs. The nice thing was that everyone at the airport that I talked to, they could speak English quite well. So when you're in the airport, you don't have to worry necessarily about needing to speak Japanese or navigating through that process. On the outside of customs, then I needed to figure out my ground transportation situation. So the person that I was going to meet, who was going to take me to my living quarters, was going to meet me at a bus station about an hour away. So I needed a bus ticket. I was able to get my ticket, and the people there spoke English quite well. I could explain where I wanted to go, and they instructed me on how to get to where I needed. I also ended up exchanging all of my USD currency cash in my wallet, which I had about $500, into Japanese yen at the exchange counter. It was a pretty straightforward process. They gave me about 144 yen to 1 USD compared to the actual exchange rate of about 150 yen to 1 USD. So that's not too bad. That's maybe a 4% surcharge um, on the cash, which isn't great if you're transferring a large number of cash, but uh, you're not going to find really another place in Japan to convert from USD to Japanese yen. The thing of note was that you could only do a cash to cash transfer. So if you wanted to have a large amount of Japanese yen, for instance, you're paying for, in my case, rent in cash, then you'll have to get more cash from an ATM with your card rather than doing it at the exchange counter. I was able to get on the bus on the outside by navigating to the information on the ticket, but as soon as I was outside the airport, that's the end. I haven't heard any English since. So you have to be at least reasonably prepared to get on the bus. I showed them the ticket, told the station that I was getting off, and they took my luggage accordingly. The bus, just like on the trains in Japan, was pretty quiet. There was a few people who were talking, but they were talking in whispers to each other, and very brief. The signage on the bus themselves about the station was in English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. So they are getting better in Tokyo, it seems like, with the international community in terms of the signage, but don't expect to hear any English necessarily. But if you speak at all in Japanese, they're just going to speak to you in Japanese. So that was fun. It was about an hour and a half when we finally arrived at the train station or the bus station. And then it was about a 20-minute drive to where I'm staying currently on campus. So the scientific campus that I'm on currently is quite large, but it was very dark and quiet when we arrived. Yeah, my boss showed me around the building a little bit. And when I reached the house where I'm staying, in terms of my guest situation, the building itself was also very large, but very, very quiet. I'm still not certain that there are other people in this building, but I'm on the second floor currently of I think a 4-story building, and my apartment is very quiet. Once I got inside the rental area that I'm staying, it's about 400 square feet. There's a place to take off your shoes at the entrance way, which is pretty common in for Japanese style housing. Um, and there was some minor furnishings. So there was a bed, which was here. There was a hot water cooker, towels, and as a bedroom, bathroom, and like shampoo and conditioner, but not much else. Notably, there wasn't any microwave, there weren't any pots and pans, and there wasn't a rice cooker. So there wasn't really a whole lot to cook with. But the one thing I really do like about this rental place that I'm currently at is it has a full size Japanese style bathroom. For those who might not know, Japanese really value cleanliness. So the first thing that you do before you would take a bath, which is pretty common, is you take a full cleansing shower. You wash your hair, you wash your body, you soap down. So you spray yourself off in the shower area. And then when you're clean, you can sit in the bathtub or as long as you like. It's more of a relaxation, meditative type process. And the electronics in the bathroom are set up to do this. We can individually set the water temperature, yeah, for the bath and for the shower. So that's pretty cool. Um, so I slept pretty good that night because it was pretty late. I was going on about 36 hours without sleeping based off of the time change and was ready to kind of go out and about the next day. So when I went to the supermarkets and shopping, as kind of was expected, no one spoke any English, tried to speak English, cared to speak English. The nice thing was, though, I didn't feel like I needed to know that much Japanese to really navigate the process, but the Japanese that I had has really helped. If nothing else, I'd recommend learning katakana, which is one of the alphabets, especially for the foreign words and how to count. So katakana, if you can read it, will help you identify import style food stuffs. So I would recommend doing that. Counting is also useful, um, especially in the cases of trying to figure out how many bags you need and how many do you want. You want one, two, three, four. So being able to count and then whether or not you can explain whether or not you're going to use a card or not is pretty much the extent of the Japanese that I've needed thus far. Uh, so far, I've hadn't had a problem with taking my credit card in any of the supermarkets or convenience stores that I've gone to. It's been pretty straightforward, and I think the conversion rate from USD to Japanese yen has been maybe 1 or 2%. The tax with the cost built in is noted on all of the price tags in addition to the cost without the tax. So it's very clear how much you're going to pay, at least in yen. You can use the Google Translate app, which has been pretty well developed now to take a picture of something that you're interested in translating, such as the back of food stuff at the store, and it'll convert all of the lettering like instantaneously in the system. So I think it's gotten a lot better over the years in terms of ease of which a US person who doesn't speak that much Japanese can navigate in Japan. It also helps that people in general do not want to talk to you. That means you don't have to worry about small talk. You don't have to worry about people just talking at you and you don't really understand what's going on. The only people who've really said anything to me are the cashiers, and that's more out of the sense of professional courtesy. And they have been very patient with me and very professional, but they're the only ones I've talked to so far in Japanese. On the other side, am the only foreigner that I've seen so far in Japan, other than, of course, at the airport. But no one really seems to care as well that I'm a foreigner. I don't get any strange looks. No one looks at me twice. And when I did speak in some Japanese, they just talk back to me in Japanese. They don't seem impressed. My first thoughts on the city have also been pretty consistent with what other people have noted. The city is clean, but it's very compact. The roads are a lot smaller than what you'd expect to see in America. The cars are a lot smaller than you expect to see in America. Most of the people are smaller than you expect to see in America. Everyone's thin, out and about, well dressed, quiet, and well behaved. It's a city of professionals, from the kids to the adults to the elderly. I'm in more of a suburby area of Tokyo, so most of the houses in my area are freestanding two-story single-family homes as opposed to skyscrapers, but they have a nice Japanese aesthetic that I quite enjoy. And fortunately, the city is also laid out to be very walkable. So even within a 1 mile radius of where I'm currently staying, I have shops nearby that include three different supermarkets, two different convenience stores, an electronic shop, and a secondhand store and gyms. My favorite place to go so far has been the secondhand shop. So I've always liked secondhand shopping in the US. You can always find all sorts of good deals. Well, in Japan, it's even better. I was able to get some HDMI cables that were like 30 feet for a buck, or a nice new brand name backpack for $5. I can get a rice cooker that would have normally been $120 for 20 bucks, that sort of thing. So they have just about everything at that secondhand shop that I went to. And if you're starting a new life here and you need to buy a whole bunch of stuff, that's what I would totally recommend. And how to behave is just kind of a golden rule, which is, figure out exactly how your actions will affect other people and act accordingly. People here are going to try to be very intentional with how they act, what they do, the space that their body takes. So if you can just think about what your actions will have or affect other people and then act to mitigate the damage that you're causing, then basically you'll fit in fine with society, it seems like. So those have been my experiences so far in Japan. I do enjoy it. I'm hoping to get a little bit more experience talking to people in a more informal situation rather than always at a supermarket. But I'll have work this next week, so I'll be able to actually get a better idea of what my life here is going to be. And I will try to update this vlog as possible. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.